Um, we'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Also, can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me? Oh, great, thank you. Cool. Okay. Martin has his session. Martin has his session. Oh, I think it's my phone.
喂喂，Hello，1、2、3，Hello，Yeah，Hello。
喂，1、2、3，喂。
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know it's been a long day. So despite the long day, thank you for coming. So some of you may have attended the National Geographic Storytelling Workshop on Sunday, yesterday. And one of the key takeaways of the Nat Geo workshop on how to tell your stories is to know your audience. And today we will be exploring the opportunity of when your audiences are the political forces. And so we're going to be building on what the storytelling workshop did, but in a way that the work program leads can implement it to represent their activities in the international fora. And over the course of the next hour or so, we will hear from our speakers on how you can leverage on the work program activity, the work that work program activities do on the global policy level. So I am not going to be talking much today, but I will be handing over to our moderator, Dr. Ernest Achampong, and our speakers, Ms. Fatma Usra from the Maldives Ministry of Environment, Mr. Matsomi Malichain from the UNFCCC Secretariat, and Ms. Sara Minelli from the UNCCD Secretariat.
Yeah, thank you very much, my dear colleague, Tushar. Yes, we have quite an unusual number of people here, but we're going to start with the hope that other people will join us. It's a great session that we're going to have. Basically, the whole idea is that we're going to discuss how various convention secretariat can support us in terms of the knowledge and understanding in the engagement as in the process leading up to the COP. And so, a very good evening to all of us. You're welcome to the session. My name is Ernest. I'm with the Secretariat, Geo Secretariat based in Geneva. And I look forward to the session. The idea is that we're going to again discuss the strategic preparation to engage actively ahead and during international events, such as the COPs that we've talked about. As we all know, this year is quite important year for international environmental decision making. With three major COP events that are happening this year, the conference of the parties to the Rio Convention. We have the Convention on Biodiversity COP16 in Bali, Colombia, in October 2024. We have the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP29 in November, in Baku, Azerbaijan, and we have the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, COP16 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in December. And so this is a very crucial year where you have three COPs in the same year. And so there's a lot of emphasis on how we're going to shape global discussions and actions on our environment as far as decision making is concerned. One thing that is clear is that we've talked about some of these key issues that are going to be addressed at the various COPs, which include biodiversity conservation, climate change, mitigation and adaptation, and also land degradation. These are all critical issues that affect our lives, it affects our planet, and it affects everyday aspects of our life. Now, as all these countries are gearing up to gather in these COPs, the role of Earth intelligence in supporting environmental decision-making is very critical, as we've heard throughout this opening session and also through the discussions that have happened. Now, GeoWork program leads have the opportunity to strategically position themselves in terms of how they can use Earth intelligence to support their process at the COPs, as well as the COP itself in terms of decisions that can be taken. While the COP events are often seen as the centerpiece of shaping these agreements, one thing that is clear is that it's a year-long preparation of activities, discussions, meetings, committee groups and all that. So there are a lot of things that are happening during that time. And for GeoWork program, this is also a key opportunity where we can engage and ensure that our contributions to global policies are heard and beyond the COPs themselves. So for example, we have the NAP process, which is the National Adaptation Plan process within the UNFCCC. This offers a clear entry point to integrate Earth observations in climate negotiations and implementation. And this, we will have a separate session on that, but thankfully we have one of our colleagues from the UNFCCC Secretariat who will share with us some insights on that. A key focus for GEO is to showcase long-term commitment to addressing environmental challenges using Earth observations. Now, what for GEO is key is that we have been consistently promoting the involvement of GeoWork program activities in these policy processes at the COPs. But now, what has become clear is that we need to do more in terms of engagement. We need to push more in terms of active participating in the decision-making process, as well as the integration of Earth observations in these processes, so that we can also increase the visibility of GEO's impact, as well as the use of Earth observations in addressing critical issues within our society. One thing that is affecting us, which is a challenge, is that within the GEO community of scientific and technical aspect, there is always the tendency to have some of these initiatives that are working in isolation. And that is very difficult when you are talking to stakeholders without their input. And so with this disconnect, it becomes very difficult for some of our products to be heard or some of our products to be integrated into decision-making globally. And so we have the opportunity for our convention secretariats to tell us more on how we can help, how they can help our work program activities engage actively as well as influence decision-making. So for GEO, it is very important to mention that as we have been engaging with the whole processes of the COPs, we have also contributed in terms of knowledge packages, in terms of active contribution through products. For instance, we have the UNF CCC technology knowledge product, which one of my colleagues here, Rui, contributed to, which has been approved, and I think we'll talk about that briefly as well. We are also having two pavilions that we are setting up during the CBD COP, as well as the UNCCD COP, in collaboration with some of our key partners. And so there is that opportunity for us to engage actively through our work programs. For the Secretariat, one thing that is clear is that we always advocate for our focal points and our principals to actively engage at a country level with the representatives of the countries to the COPs. And so for us, this is a good opportunity for us to discuss some of these issues in terms of the processes, in terms of how we can actively engage, what are the capacity building mechanisms that we can leverage on, and how we can together influence decision making using Earth observations, which has become critical to within our space as far as our environment is concerned. And so on that note, we will be having these engagement and discussions through presentations, but also with our panelists telling us more. We also have one of our country representatives, and they have been very vibrant and active in the negotiation process. I'm talking in the case of Maldives, and so we will also be hearing something about how they have engaged the process. Thankfully, the GEO Secretariat has had a memorandum of understanding with Maldives recently on the basis of the Global Ecosystem Atlas. We will also be hearing something about that and how it also supports the engagement process. And so we're hoping that we will have a very good session here in terms of the knowledge that will be produced. It doesn't matter whether we are 2 or 3, but we're going to capture everything in details, and then we can process it as we go on and share with the various leads of the work program activities. On that note, let me get to my seat, and then we can start the interaction process. Thank you very much. Once again, I'm very thankful to you, Sarah, Motsomi, and Usla, for making it here. It's been a long journey, all the way to China. We are here, and so we must do justice to this course. And so I think we will start with Motsomi. We want to also understand your role from the UNFCCC Secretariat. What has happened so far when it comes to this whole process of engagement, and how the work program activities can be part of what is happening as far as the COP is concerned. So please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ernest. And let me first express our sincere thanks to GEO Secretariat for the continued collaborative engagement with us in this work. I think this is very important. And also thanks to my co-panelists and of course everybody in the room. One thing that is true with climate change is that the Earth observations are the foundation of what we do. So without the Earth observations, we wouldn't be able to even start. So their foundation in terms of what is the issue, how much the climate is changing, the greenhouse gas emissions and everything, and they help the governments then make the decisions that they are making. In fact, much of the evidence that's becoming reality now, I think it continues to be a critical component of the decisions. So this year I just wanted to just give an overview of what will be happening. This is just an overview sketch in terms of the COP that we are having that is coming up. I know that many people might have attended the conference of the parties, but as Ernest did indicate that it's just a moment in the whole journey. We do a lot of work throughout the year. So this year we will have our COP29 in Azerbaijan, and the way it usually runs, we have technical beats as well as political beats. So the actual conference itself starts on the 11th, but then the week before that, That's the week where we have the negotiating groups have their preparatory meetings. Those of you that attend the COPs might know also that also there's potential engagement there in case there are any specific issues. But the conference will start on the 11th and end on the 22nd. And the 11 to 16 is what we usually call the technical part of the COP, where it's usually negotiations at the technical level. So the people that are the experts are the ones doing the negotiations. And in parallel to that, we will also have a series of events. But then this technical component, as I'm saying, we will have negotiations, and Earth observations are, or at least part of a lot of the negotiations that are happening. As an example, in technology, for instance, and I'm very happy that lately Rui and other colleagues have been able to elevate the issue of Earth observations in the agenda of the negotiations themselves formally to have a discussion of that. So technology discussions are one of the major users of that. The national adaptation plans, we won't be able to do adaptation without observations, the discussions on loss and damage, and I'm very glad that DO is also actively engaging in those negotiations as well. We have a home agenda, I would say a resident agenda, which we call the research and systematic observations. That basically is where the governments discuss issues of Earth observations and how they continue to inform the entire process. So those technical negotiations happen in the first week. They lead into outcomes that would feed into the second week that make decisions. Then in terms of the events that are interesting, the Earth Information Day, which is held at every conference of the parties, will happen on the 11th on the first day. And then we'll continue like that with other events that I will not go into the details. And then in the second week, of course, I can introduce this in much more detail if you're interested to know in terms of what are the different components in each one of these in terms of how we can engage. But if we go to the second slide, I think that's where I wanted to talk a little bit about what we already have in terms of areas where we have very strong and engagement of the Earth, the geo community. As I did indicate on the research and systematic observations, the geo community, or at least Earth observations, are the foundation for the climate. The whole value chain of the climate, from observations to planning, implementation, monitoring and evaluation, all that whole value chain is informed by Earth observations. And under the SAPS, there was a subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice that provides that advice. We do have formal negotiations, as I did indicate, on research and systematic observations, but also there are two events that are happening each year. At every COP, we have what we call the Earth Information Day, which is now the policy interface. How do we link the science with the policy and decision making? And then the research dialogue, which happens during the intersessional period, which is May, June, our intersessional period. That is where we actually look at the latest innovations in research, what is new, and now I'm glad that even here, now we are starting to elevate the issue of artificial intelligence, and that's where some of these things are discussed by parties, and then they will elevate them to the COP. So there are two critical components on how we promote the Earth observations into the whole space. Adaptation, this is my passion, this is what I've been doing for the last 30 years of my career. So this is what we do. Data is is essential for the entire chain. Even to access funding, for that importantly matter. I mean, many of you would know that when you have to access funding, you have to demonstrate the climate rationale, or at least why do you need to be implementing the actions you are implementing, and climate data is needed for that. Geo community luckily produced a supplementary material, or it's a technical guide, that also helps countries as they do their adaptation plans on how best to make use of the Earth observations, but also where to get them, because not everybody has access to these. In developing project proposals, the review of draft NAPs and the workshops. NAP Expose is another big adaptation event. We have the next one coming up in April next year, tentatively in Zambia, and we're looking forward to preparing with our colleagues in terms of how we can continue to help countries and use that platform. Loss and damage is also an important piece in closing the scope in adaptation. And in loss and damage is actually even much more important as well, because in order for the losses and damages to be associated with climate change, how do we prove that? Only Earth observations can provide that evidence. And there's the Santiago network now that is now operational, and it is a service-oriented component of the loss and damage mechanism. And the geo community will be critical there to help and be of service on how this can be provided. And the technology I already mentioned there, The technology, I think we're at the stage where we know that we need, I mean, it's not even a question. We need technology to make the right choices and decisions. And we need those technologies to be able to implement actions. And how do we bring that on? And I'm very glad with Rui, and I was also discussing, and this is also a great opportunity, and thanks, Anas, for inviting us. We'll start the conversation and see how we can take it forward, including through the recommendations that have just been adopted last week, and how this can filter into the process, and maybe they can lead into something that can grow into collaborations we can enhance. Another important piece on Earth observations, there is a reporting for parties under the UNFCCC, which is an obligation. Parties must report on greenhouse gas inventories. They must, in their national communications or biennial transparency reports, there's a lot of national reports. And Fatma will I know that she's doing this on her desk every day. She has to include data on the climate scenarios of her country, on what are the future scenarios and etc. And only that information, you can only get it through Earth observations. And all these reports are mandatory and required under the process. So we cannot be able to do our climate change, and this is very critical. And these are the areas that we already have. And if we go to the last slide, I will just end up in a minute. Just if you go, yeah, this one, I just wanted to highlight as well that now we have the global goal on adaptation. There are discussions on discussing indicators there. And one of the thematic targets, I mean, not dimensional targets, we talk about them. They talk about each country or each party to establishing multi-hazard early warning systems and climate information services for risk reduction, systematic observations, to support improved climate-related data and information and services. And that's where I think this one cannot be implemented without the geo community. And that's where we need the geo community. And it would be useful to start to follow the discussion. Of course, the indicators will be delivered next year. But I think there are workshops that have been held. There is one that is coming up now, and also submissions, but I think for the workshops next year, it will be very useful to start to engage, and I'll be very happy to, in case you don't already have linkages, I can talk with colleagues and then we can find how to fix that. Ocean and climate change is the same, and I already mentioned about loss and damage. So there are ample opportunities and also emerging ones, but we see the critical engagement with the geo community. So sorry for being a little bit long, but there's a whole lot of, thank you.
This is amazing. I think people who are not here are missing out, work program activities, are missing out on this huge opportunity, but luckily we are here and we're going to send a message, because these are areas that we've been asked on several occasions that we have to make an impact. We have to increase our visibility about what we are doing and how it is contributing to addressing critical issues. And these are all entry points that we can capitalize on. And so there is no excuse. There's no excuse at all for geo work program activities to really contribute to what is happening at the global level. Thank you very much for this. Let me go to Sarah. Perhaps you can continue from where Somi ended with what UNCCD is doing as far as the engagement and also opportunities for further engagement among work program activities.
Thank you very much, Ernest. Yeah, I assume most people are familiar with UNFCCC COPs, less people familiar with UNCCD COPs. So I have a big role to play here in making some awareness of the role of the UNCCD and the importance of Earth observation in our process. So our next COP will be held in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia in December. It's the first time we have a conference in the Middle East. It's a region that is has a special interest for us when it comes to Earth observation, because the methodologies we are currently using for land degradation monitoring are not as effective in hyper-arid areas, arid and hyper-arid areas. So this is a topic that will probably come up at COP, and we hope to be able to design some solution together with experts in the region. But more broadly, COP16 is seen as a landmark event aimed at enhancing the global ambition and accelerate action on three main topics: land restoration, drought resilience, and using a people-centered approach. Using Earth observation through the last round of reporting, we have estimated that every year at least 1 million hectares of land is degraded due to human influence mostly. And so the COP is seen, at least the vision is the COP should change this trajectory and help us shape a more sustainable future. To deliver this vision, the COP program will be designed around 2 tracks, and this is something new for the UNCCD. We generally only had the traditional negotiation track, but copying a little bit from our colleagues at climate change, and thanks to the support of Saudi Arabia, this time we will also be able to have an action agenda. So the idea is that the 2 processes will be mutually supportive. We hope to get global ambition, bold decision in the negotiation process, accompanied by concrete action to help parties implement what is decided at COP. In terms of entry point for the negotiation track, the key entry point for Earth observation is the national reporting process. And I think later during the session, I will explain a little bit how we are supporting countries in using Earth observation for reporting. But for this talk, I wanted to focus a little bit more on the action agenda, because that's, again, something new that we have not done before. This action agenda will be designed around a series of thematic days. You have them here on the slide with dates and everything, but the one I wanted to mention are the Land Day on the 4th of December. Then we will have the Agri-Food System Day, and this is, I wanted to raise because it's an emerging issue for UNCCD COP, even though it's central, of course, to our mandate, is something that we've not been focusing on recently. And so this is a potential interesting entry point for GeoGLAM, for example, where potentially, if a decision related to agri-food system is taken at this COP, then we will need to explore what do we need in terms of indicator, what do we need in terms of data. But maybe the most important day of all for GEO and Earth observation will be the Science, Technology and Innovation Day. For that day, we are planning a high-level event on healing our land through science and Earth intelligence. Under the Earth Intelligence session, we will discuss data gaps not only for land degradation, but also to enhance biodiversity, for climate change adaptation, so looking a bit at the synergies among the Rio Convention and the common data gaps and the common data needs. In addition to that, GeoLDN will also organize a high-level event during the Governance Day, looking at integrated land use planning, and again, how this can serve the needs of all the conventions. And then to complement these high-level events, there will be pavilions. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will set up a science pavilion. This will be organized in what is called the green zone, so the area of the COP that is open to the public for everyone who is accredited to come to COP to participate. And the science pavilion will also host an area specifically dedicated to GEO, as well as an area for GeoLDN. So area dedicated to GEO will also potentially be open to any of the GEO activity that would be interested to come to our conference of the parties. And I think in liaison with the GEO Secretariat, you could find entry points, how you could contribute to the session. How to come to COP, you need an accreditation through your organization or through a country delegation. The accreditation process is not complex as long as the organization you work for is a legal entity, as a legal status, and then you just need to submit a form, get accredited, and you can, in that sense, then come and attend our conference of the parties. Or have a link to an organization that is accredited, or come through the country delegation. Those are the various options that are on the table. In terms of GeoLDN has a special mandate from our conference of the parties. So they will have a dedicated area in the pavilion where they will try to demonstrate how they are implementing the mandate that they receive from our COP. And they are planning to bring some 60 participants from the country. So a great opportunity to show the progress that they have made. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. By the way, GeoLDN is one of the key flagship initiative of GEO. GEO land degradation neutrality is one of the examples, success stories that we are very proud about, and they will be featuring at the COP16 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Sarah is here. If you are interested, you can connect after our session, and then she can tell you more. Let me go to Usra. Yes, so as a country representative, you've had the opportunity to engage, and so we want to learn from you what you have done as far as supporting country delegations in the different conventions, including the upcoming ones that we've talked about. So, your view.
Yes, thank you, Gio, for inviting Maldives to be on this panel and for welcoming us to this beautiful city. I think being the newest member to Geo, I think we are very new to what Geo is doing, but from what we have experienced from the last year to till now, I think Geo's team is very hardworking and very dedicated to Earth observation and including all. And this year being the year of COPs, UNFCCC, UNCCD, CBD, even other COPs, including the COP of Ozone, Montreal Protocol. I think this year is the time for GEO and the representative of GEO, the whole GEO team to be involved in the COPs. I think it should, the country, member states always are busy with the negotiations and mostly doesn't have the time to engage in the pavilions until the very last day, until the negotiations is finalized. I think GEO team needs to be having some bilaterals with the higher level participants because that's where most of the time, time where technical colleagues and the political appointees do get to meet and have discussions on what are the needs. And when it comes from organizations like GEO, who have already worked with other countries on Earth observation and helping other developing states, developed countries, working with developed countries, I think that brings out a message to everyone, including the highest, to the technical. And I think every opportunity that you get during COPs, whether it's related to biological diversity or climate change, you should take the opportunity. When I went through the post-2025 work program of GEO, I think it addresses almost all of our concerns as a developing states, especially the SIDS. So I think whatever opportunity you get to collaborate and meet, whether it's informal, even during the informal meetings, and even the corridors will be your way to go. And like how it was mentioned in the morning, let's bring out the crazy in your team and meet with our member states and try to get us on board with other member states on board with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Usra. I think this is quite interesting. GEO has a memorandum of understanding signed just this year with Maldives. And so Maldives will be a pilot for the Global Ecosystem Atlas initiative. This is very great. I think one thing that is key is the enthusiasm of the member country to working with GEO in terms of initiatives and in terms of addressing their own issues. Would you agree with me that countries need to also show that level of enthusiasm in terms of the approach that comes to them when GEO wants to work with them?
Definitely. I think most of the time member countries don't know the available opportunities for them. Whenever we are approached and when we are explained to that how the program or the organization works and how much it's related to our work, our day-to-day work and the works that we get from our colleagues from the secretariats, definitely we are willing to work with them because I was able to learn about GEO last year itself and I realized this is where we are lacking in. This is what we need in our work and we have been very much willing to work with GEO and move forward with our works, how we just signed an MOU and I'm already looking forward to what we are going to be doing next.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so thank you very much, our panel, for these wonderful interventions. Now we go onto the screen to hear from one of our colleagues from GeoBond, which is the Biodiversity Observation Network, which is also one of our GEO flagships. And then they have been quite active at a global level when it comes to the Convention on Biodiversity. And so he's going to share with us what they have done and how other work program activities can also emulate from GeoBond.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to take part in this GEO Symposium session, preparing the GEO work program for the COPs. My name is Andrew Gonzalez. I am co-chair of GeoBond, and I'm also a researcher and professor at McGill University here in Montreal, Canada. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today, but allow me via this video to speak to you today about GeoBond's science in support of the UNCBD's Global Biodiversity Framework. Now, GeoBond, or the Group on Earth Observations Biodiversity Observation Network, is a flagship project of GEO with more than 3,300 members in 149 countries. And our mission since day one has been about improving the acquisition, coordination, and delivery of biodiversity observations, the indicators that are built on those observations, and the model-based insights that we derive from the indicators and observations. And so it's in this context that GeoBond has provided multiple interventions, but also offered multiple sources and strands of advice to the parties that are negotiating within the COPs. We enjoy an observer status, which means we can give interventions after the parties, and typically we speak to two key themes: the importance of observations that underpin the essential biodiversity variables that GeoBond has developed over the last decade, and the philosophy that we espouse, which is to build robust indicators on an EBV framework. And in complement to that, we have also developed biodiversity observation networks. These bonds are essentially systematic monitoring programs that are stood up by countries around the world in support of their national monitoring frameworks and national biodiversity strategy and action plans under the Global Biodiversity Framework. And so we were asked to provide answers to a couple of questions. The first is, what is your practical experience, both as an organization, as an individual? And I must say that in my role as co-chair of GeoBond since early 2020, my contribution to the COP has increased significantly. I've given interventions on behalf of GeoBond at COP15, but also in other meetings such as SBI and SBSTA that happen between the COPs, where we're providing scientific, technical and technological advice to the parties. And in these interventions, we're offering the position of GeoBond on biodiversity and monitoring science. And those interventions are always framed in service to the parties, in thinking about lowering the barrier to the access that science, to understanding what is critical to effective monitoring, so that parties are not overly burdened with excessive science needs and infrastructure needs to be able to mobilize their monitoring frameworks. I also served as an expert on the ad hoc technical expert group to support the development of the monitoring framework. And here our role was to provide guidelines on how to operationalize the indicators that are available to parties to calculate and report on progress towards their targets and goals. What have we achieved as an organization? Well, I think by virtue of being present, by being consistently present and offering guidance, it led to GeoBond being cited in the monitoring framework, the COP Decision 15/5, as an organization offering support to countries with operationalizing the monitoring framework, notably through providing guidance on monitoring networks and indicators. We've also provided experts to the RTEG that ultimately contributed a 350-page document that was well received by the parties at SBSTA earlier this year. And that document provides guidance to countries on the application and use of indicators via their national or domestic monitoring frameworks. And we've also provided input and advice to negotiations via science briefs that we've put together. These you're seeing in the front covers here of 6 of the 8 science briefs that were produced in collaboration, in close collaboration with the biodiscovery program of Future Earth. And it was by pooling our resources and expertise that we were able to mobilize upwards of 60 scientists per brief that provided in-depth but readily accessible access to the latest knowledge and understanding in these different themes that you see here. And this was providing science input to the working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that occurred just 5-6 months prior to COP15, where the GBF was adopted. And these briefs were extremely well received and have been downloaded thousands of times from the GeoBond website. But what advice can we offer to other geo initiatives? Well, first of all, I think it's incredibly important to frame it as activities that are in support of the parties. How do we pivot our work to provide knowledge that is needed, and is needed in a way that reflects the different capacities that countries have, the different infrastructures, the different access to data and scientific know-how that clearly varies among states. And so we have to be able to adapt our models and tools so they can be readily used by parties and by the active organizations that are embedded within the countries that are mobilizing their actions to not only support the science and policy that's needed to reach the targets and goals in country, but to do so with national and subnational governments, with municipalities, with the private sector. All of these critical areas and critical needs of knowledge are part of what GeoBond tries to offer. And so it's that co-design and co-development of the tools and the guidance that's critical, I think, to success within the COPs, but also subsequent to the COPs in the implementation. And so here is one example where we provided an information document where we provided guidance on the workflow that was going to be needed to stand up these national monitoring frameworks, the data production and sharing, the best practices and data standards that were needed to support the monitoring science, that is the models, the knowledge services, the data layers that underpin successful and ready use of the indicators that countries then need to report their progress towards the various goals and targets. One critical question is, how do we enable input from the GEO program to the COPs? And I think here there is a need for a regular process that could be chaperoned and coordinated by the GEO Secretariat to provide support to GEO projects that want to participate in the COPs. Within GeoBond, we created a policy task force that works closely with the GeoBond Secretariat to support members that are seeking to engage and participate. So, for example, the written interventions that we give at the COPs are written and jointly written by the policy task force with the Secretariat and with a pool of active members of GeoBond. The GeoBond Secretariat, through this task force, also communicates the opportunities that are available to work with the UNCBD Secretariat to contribute reviews to critical documents or to participate in various meetings at the COPs, but also these other meetings on the margins of the COPs that are seeking scientific input and advice to the negotiations, but also to the implementation of the monitoring framework and also the reporting process that countries are required to do. So that's it from me. Thank you for your attention, and I'm always happy to follow up by email or any other means if you have any questions following this presentation. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Andy. Andy Gonzalez is a professor
Hello.
at the is it McGill University? Yes, exactly. And this is quite a very important reflection of what our panelists have said. If you recall, sorry, you remember that Usra just talked about national reporting and the need for data. Mutsomi talked about joining SAFTA, some of these key data and information that are critical And there are so many entry points if you look at what Andy just presented in terms of the data production, in terms of the planning process, in terms of the contribution to the country level engagement and what they have to also report. So there are a whole lot of opportunities that we can tap in terms of engagement. Let me come to you, Sarah. You have been involved with GeoLDN. At least I've been a part of GeoLDN for a while, and I have seen you on a regular basis as a very active member of GeoLDN. Would you also share with us the experience of GeoLDN in terms of engagement, in terms of country level engagement, and how other work program activities can emulate GeoLDN in terms of the approach you are using? I know that GeoLDN has been successful in terms of working with various countries to identify their own challenges. So please share with us briefly what GeoLDN has done.
Yes, so first of all, I think GeoLDN is a bit of a unique case among the GeoLDN initiative because it was established in 2018 at the Kyoto Geo Week in response to a request from the UNCCD Conference of the Parties. So it has a very clear policy mandate and it has a very clear user group, especially if you consider that 130 countries, which are probably represented in this room, have committed to set land degradation neutrality target. I'm saying that because I'm preparing also for the session tomorrow on NAP alignment, where it's clear that countries commit to multiple goals under the NAP, under the UNCCD, but often those connections are not made at the national level, at the international level. So just to raise the awareness, 130 countries have set land degradation neutrality targets, and those are the countries that GeoLDN is servicing. The original mandate for GeoLDN was to support reporting on SDG indicator 15.3.1, which is proportion of degraded land. But over various COPs, that mandate has been reinforced and it has been expanded. So we move from just support to reporting to more broadly support assessment, planning, and monitoring of land degradation neutrality intervention. So a much broader mandate. And as a little homework before coming here, I was counting how many times GeoLDN or Geo have been mentioned in COP decision. And the number of instances has grown. In COP14, it was mentioned 8 times, and then 10 times at the COP15, which was our last COP. I think in that sense, the fact that the Secretariat, myself, but also other colleagues, were involved on a daily basis in the activities that has played an important role, especially because through the Secretariat, GeoLDN can have an input into the documentation that we prepare for COP. They can report on the progress that they have made. And so parties then are more aware of the role GeoLDN is playing. Not only, but in the UNCCD process, we not only draft the documentation, we also draft what we call draft decision, so language that party can consider in their negotiation process. And so we can put concrete suggestions on the role GeoLDN could play or specific requests that parties may want to make to GeoLDN. And as you were saying, my involvement and our colleagues' involvement has been really on a daily basis. We are involved in weekly meeting with GeoLDN. We are part of the leadership group. We help them plan the direction or the activities that they want to organize. So that close coordination, I think, has a role to play. But even more important then is when countries actively recognize the role GeoLDN is playing. And this is more likely to happen, that countries recognize it in their statements during COP. This is more likely to happen if they receive a direct support from the initiative. So yes, COP is the final milestone, but the work needs to be done throughout the year. And in that sense, GeoLDN has made progress recently, especially recently. In Cape Town in 2023, they organized the first, what they call Global Dialogue Forum to discuss integrated land use planning for LDN with participation from some 14 countries. So that was the first occasion to come together and create a network for peer-to-peer exchange and for the provision of in-person technical support. It has continued over the year through online calls with country clusters. and through the creation of a new working group under GEO, which is devoted to decision support. So the engagement, the day-to-day engagement with the country is growing, and I'm hoping that at COP, with the increased visibility given by the pavilion and by those high-level events, we can make it even a stronger case for GEO and GeoLDN to be involved in COPs.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sarah. This is quite insightful. So back to you, Usra. We know Maldives is one of the islands with climate change as a major threat. We've talked about this, we know about this. Tell us, are there any specific outcomes or policy changes that resulted based on the participation of Maldives in the COPs, in terms of your engagement, in terms of how it shapes decisions at the national level?
Yes, I think Maldives, the name itself, is known to a lot of people through our negotiations, and I hope that we have made our name clear on international MEA negotiations. For us, if we are to go and negotiate and ask for support from other countries, and ask them to help us with the triple planetary crisis, that should really be reflected in our national plans. We are a party to numerous conventions, and we have been very much known in the CBD, UNCCD, even UNFCCC platforms. For example, in last year when KMGBF was adopted, we were a known voice because we were part of the High Ambition Coalition on Nature, Human and Nature, and also we were known because we worked with Global Ocean Alliance. So we were very much advocating for the 30 by 30 to be adopted, and the end of CBD COP, we really came up with it. And we are currently working towards the NBCP revision, and this would be our third revision. And this time, when we are revising the NBCP, we look forward to including all the 23 targets within our national NBCP, national targets including, and also these targets, once these targets are set, we are looking forward to this to be included in our strategic action plan. So not only for our national biodiversity strategic action plan, but to a national level, our broader SEP. And if we are to talk about our national 20-year development plans that we are currently to start working with, start our works on, we are hoping to take all of the discussions, the negotiation, and the targets that we set internationally to our national targets. And also in the climate space, I think we have a lot of reporting going on, whether it is NDC revision or the NAP and other reportings. I think with the reportings, we are able to find out the gaps and the things that we need to improve. These are taken into account and included in our national plans, and we are looking forward to implement in our work plans, so that when we are going to the COPs, we can say we are doing this. So please help us.
Wow, that is great. A small country with a big voice and a big hat. Yeah, thank you very much, Usra. Yeah, so let me come back to you, Mutsomi. One thing that is clear is that the Secretariat is doing a lot of work leading up to the COP every year. Would you share with us in terms of how you do incorporate feedback from experts, and also are there avenues that other activities or initiatives within the GEO community can access in order to share their input or, into the whole process?
Yeah, thanks very much, Ernest. Indeed, there are so many avenues. I'll talk about 4 categories for now. In the UNFCCC process, we have parties to make submissions. This forms the basis for the decisions that we have at the end of the day. In fact, one very good example, of course, Rui already was telling us that there was a declaration, at least this outcome document that was adopted. Of course, not the whole document will be converted into a decision, but it informs what governments might agree upon. So when it comes to Earth observations, I mentioned that there's the Earth Information Day, which parties also have opportunities. Of course, the whole community has opportunities in terms of providing information or sharing posters, but sharing information in that space. So that's one way to provide input. The ocean dialogue, as I mentioned, will happen it happens every year now. This COP, when it comes, we will definitely get a call for submissions for the topics for the ocean dialogue next year. So it will also be an opportunity for the geo community to propose what topics should be discussed. And I look for, perhaps this is also an opportunity to put the points or topics from the GWP in terms of now what could be discussed in the ocean dialogue as well next year. Every year we assess progress made in national adaptation plans. And it would also be useful to see how the geo community can help us in terms of information that feeds into that piece. How can countries report on that? So that's one piece on the submissions. Then the second piece is on the review of draft documents from the countries themselves. Actually, in the preparation of the national adaptation plans, it is, we all, many of you are from the developing countries. One thing we keep on saying is that there isn't enough data in the developing countries. But of course, there are a lot of global data sets and regional data sets that have been developed and are available and can be used. And a lot of the geo community members have that data set. Once countries have produced their drafts, those that want the opportunity, we do share those drafts with the community, and the geo members are part of that community. And we have had very positive feedback that we have had the community providing inputs into the country documents of data or analysis that then strengthens their national adaptation plans. And I do invite, of course, members of the geo community continue to look out for this space as countries prepare their NAPs. And in fact, in another session, I was also asking, countries shouldn't be left alone to work through all these data. We already have this information. Why can't we easily make it accessible and available to countries to quickly use it and spend more time in the decision-making part, but not on the analysis, because we can do this easily. The third part I already mentioned was the guidelines, where the geo community have produced a supplement to the NAP technical guidelines. What will be important is how do we now convert that into how countries can use it. A guideline is a book, but how do we convert that into working with countries and doing case studies and saying, okay, this is how you may roll it out. And the last bit, I talked a little bit about the NAP Expos, but maybe I can speak a little bit more. This is the largest adaptation conference we have under the UNFCCC process that talks up, and it brings in, it's not a negotiation, so it brings in the practitioners, so the countries themselves and the providers of support to talk directly. And we have had a lot of successes that instead of countries writing an email, and sometimes they don't know who to write to, we bring in the community members, and the geo community members have been coming, and we look forward to more. And actually, sorry, I forgot the name of the professor from the McGill University, was Gonzalez. Yeah, he was also asking how can we engage better. I think having, we've been working with the colleagues working on the crop monitors, for instance. That is working very well. And we're looking forward to see how we can actually operationalize that. I mean, we already had workshops, and perhaps they can be a way of how we can help countries that want to establish crop monitors and do those at their country level. So it has something that continues to grow. It grew from the NAP Expos, and then we see how we can move forward. For other areas, not necessarily crop monitors, but if there are other areas, I think it provides a very good opportunity, because you have the countries that have the need, and then you have the providers of support that can easily plug in and provide that support. So we incubate a lot of the collaborations there. So these are some of the 4 areas that I would say we collect, or at least use the inputs almost directly to feed into what countries should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So at this point, what I would do is that I'll let the panelists rest a bit. If there is any burning question from any one of us here, I see people on their computers. Yeah, but if there is any question, say it again. They are taking notes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So if you have anything that you want to share, any question, I'm looking up to you. Is there anything from you? Yes. We have one, please.
Yeah, okay, thank you. It's a very interesting, a lot of information there. My name is Peng Yong. I'm coming from the Chinese Academy of Forestry. I'm doing the forest remote sensing. I think from I'm from the EU community. Currently, there are more and more data and also products available. Like it's for the forest here, we have a lot of forest cover maps and also forest parameter maps like biomass or height maps, more and more available. But somehow, all of these products are not that consistent. So I wonder, when we bring that kind of information or product to our UNFCCC flow, how we get them contributed to the policy or dialogues in the corporate process or something, or we need to build a joint group to solve that inconsistency and try to harmonize them, then can get us a better support. Yeah, this is what I have comments here.
Yeah, so I think the emphasis is on harmonization and standardization and how it influences their input. Because at the end of the day, if you are coming in with data from maybe one source, the legitimacy level may be challenged. And so if you are within a community like Geo, it makes it easy or somehow easier to be in a position to say, this is coming from a community of experts who have gone through a peer review process, who have vetted what we are sharing with you, and that means it is a bit more legitimate than having it from a different source. So this is the question he's asking, how you receive such information or feedback.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ernest. I think you've already answered part of the question because I think, like Ernest is doing, I think it's more creating the networks or coming together because if it's an individual input, I mean, the UNFCCC process doesn't necessarily have the experts themselves in the specific fields, and hence we rely on the network of partners that would bring this. And I think GEO provides that unique opportunity that is already an established, trusted network of experts that when it comes to data and methodological issues, if it comes through GEO, then we're almost sure that this is good. And I think parties as well, or at least governments in the UNFCCC, if an input is coming through GEO, they will have more trust than when it comes to an individual, let's say, organization. Of course, it can still go through, but if you bring it through such networks, it stands a better chance. But not only that, I think there are opportunities as well to take this at the technical level. Like I was saying, right now we are having these discussions that are ongoing on the global goal on adaptation. There's a lot of discussions that countries are discussing indicators, and people have different perspectives, but it's also a platform to create a common understanding on what is possible. And some of them, it is not that they are not the same by design, it is because of the realities on the ground. So it's more to understand the entry points and how each one of them arrived at what they are and how we can harmonize. So there are those technical opportunities as well, but I would also say working through GEO would be a good opportunity.
Yes, Sarah, please.
Yeah, I just would like to intervene because just last week we had a very interesting exchange with a few data providers that have developed land productivity data sets and that have noticed the large discrepancies among these data sets. And GeoLDN is really now stepping in to help us create this dialogue and bringing this data provider together to compare. So they have started actively sharing their data and looking at each other algorithm. And that's something new that has started just last week. So indeed, we are moving towards higher harmonization of products. But so far, what we have been doing was also to make available alternatives to country parties for them to then, with some support, assess which data set best represent my national reality. So having data sets that are not fully harmonized sometimes is an added value because you can find the one that describes your national situation better. That's the experience we have had.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think, in fact, one thing that for the Secretariat we've been advocating also is having this coordination mechanism at the national level. One thing we realize is that a lot of institutions are not also collaborating effectively at the national level. It may be different in China, it may be different in other countries where you have the structures in terms of the connections. But a lot of these countries where they are not really collaborating effectively are challenged when it comes to representation in terms of data, in terms of reporting, because you have, for instance, one institution that is working effectively on this data, another institution is collecting different data. They are not talking to each other. So this whole silo approach is still continuing, and it makes it difficult for even country-level coordination to be actualized when they have to present a common front at the global level. So for us, one thing that is key is national coordination, and then through the national coordination mechanism, we go to the regional level where we have the regional geos. At that point, you have a larger community where you can have discussions with the various countries to compare and to share, and then it comes to the global level where we have the global geo. So this is something at the Secretariat we are always encouraging and working on when it comes to bringing data from the country level. So thank you very much for your question. Would you want to continue to, we would want to continue to solicit additional questions, so I'm looking
I have
around.
a question, if I may.
Where?
Me.
Oh, yes, please.
But I have a question for Usra, because as a country representative, when you're making the national reports on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, of course, you're gathering a lot of data, and I'm sure as you're doing that, you're also finding that there's some missing data, right? There's gaps in the data. So as a work program activity, it's their job to be able to give you that data. But have you, in your biodiversity and climate kind of reporting, figured out, I mean, I'm sure you have, but what do you find is one of the key missing things in terms of, for your reporting, in terms of data? I don't know if my question made sense, but as a work program activity, it's something to work on.
Yeah. So
that it's useful for you to be able to do the reporting.
So if there are any gaps that you find that you can share also, I think it's, and then we can take it forward and see. Because one thing also is within the community, wanting to know what is happening at the national level in terms of needs assessment. We want to know what is happening. Sometimes the idea has always been you figure things at a global level and then you take it down. It's not working. It's never worked. And so country level needs are brought into the global frame and then we work on. So in your reporting, perhaps you may hit some gaps that you think, okay, I need this information from this end. We would want to know some of these experiences. Based on the question that, yes.
Yes. From what we have learned from the assessments that we have been doing, not only for reporting and other, for example, if you are trying to do some ecological surveys and all, what we have noticed is we usually don't have the baseline data because of the geographical stretch we have. We are not able to do extensive research or the data we have because most of our area is ocean. And of course, this will need a lot of manpower, also a lot of financial resources that to do extensive research or collect data on it. And I think for us, it has been years that we have been trying to do this. And from what we have learned to even to set a protected area, our team of one person will be working closely with other agencies, for example, with the Coast Guard, Environmental Protection Agency, and see the perfect weather to go on to dive to these sites. What we have noticed is due to climate change, we are not able to predict the weather. So, for example, June, July might be the rainy season, but when we are trying to arrange the survey trips, May might be the new rainy season. So we might have to depend on the weather just to do these researches. So we need to have the technology and other ways to do to monitor the area that we have, an easier way where we don't need much of the manpower we do not have, and also something which will be effective in all types of weathers, and we can use across the Maldives. I think this has been challenges that we have been facing when it comes to data collection itself.
Thank you very much, Musra. So I think we are at the final stage of our session, and briefly, I would want each of our panel members to share something concrete with us. I think based on the discussions we've had responded to this question. So what I would want us to do is to go straight to the recommendation. What do you think, based on your interaction and experience, can help our work program activities? I think we've shared all the entry points and avenues and all this. If you meet one of our, for instance, some of us here who are very keen to engage, what will you tell them on how to engage? Just something brief as your parting message before we end the session. So I will start for the two secretariat. Perhaps I'll start with you, Sarah, and then Mutsomi, and then I'll come to Usa in terms of what they want to have from the work program initiative.
Yes, so our main collaborator is GeoLDN, but the needs in terms of land monitoring and sustainable land management are large. And really the focus we have now is on integrated land use planning. And to make integrated land use planning happen, you need to have observation related to agriculture, to biodiversity, to climate. So all the geo activities do have a role to play. And I think there is really a need for GeoWork program activities to talk to each other and see how they can work together, which data they can share, which product they can share, especially around land use planning, which is, I think, an interest for all of the convention and for all of the geo activities. So that would be my main recommendation, integrated land use planning and working collaboratively.
Thank you very much. Somi?
Yeah, just 2 points. Actually, I'm building from the conversation we've had. One thing that has come out clearly is the awareness component of about the awareness of the presence of the whole geo community. I think it was also mentioned. We know each other very well, but I think the people that we need to provide service to might not know enough of what needs to be or is possible to be offered. So that is a component that I think remains important. Engaging, as we are saying, in the many events, either at the political level, the COPs, but also with the countries, and engaging is also something that remains of key importance to increase visibility. The second, just last thing, is the issue of providing tools already. I think what is important now is helping countries to implement actions on the ground. For us, for climate change adaptation, is how to identify the best solution and already implement it. I mean, the fact that climate change is happening and people have to do something is a fact. So that one, we have gone over that. But it's more about how do we help then countries if they are, it's drought the issue, or if it's extreme temperatures, what solution that's ready that we can help them with immediately for them to use. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so let me just quickly follow up. So yesterday there was a storytelling workshop here to show how work program activities can tell their story of impact in a very, very simple way that is understandable and that can even attract funding. So my question to you is that within your secretariat and your work, if you want to engage, do you have any, for instance, 101 lesson training or anything that can help people understand? It may not be that you don't have, but do you have anything like that, intervention that will say, look, when you come into a space, this is what you have to do, this is what you don't have to do, this is what, anything like that?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. You're right. We have a lot of information on what we want to do or what should happen, but I don't think we have enough on how people should engage. So that's already, it's an interesting, I didn't think about it, but I think it's an important question that we need to address as well ourselves, to also help people that want to contribute on how best they can contribute. So I don't have an answer, but it's a very good takeaway I'm taking also myself.
Yeah, because I think one thing that also is that, yeah, we are interested to people's, I mean, some of these discussions, some of the outcomes, oh, yes, we are interested, but we don't know how to approach them. We don't know how to start the conversation of, and sometimes if we have any guidelines or any brief documentation that tells, okay, this is the way to go, sometimes it helps. One thing that we have been doing at the Secretariat is also looking at some of these guidelines for instance, like this communication thing. Communicating your impact to people, communicating so that people can understand what you do, sometimes it's difficult for scientists and technical aspects. And that is something we are also working on very well. Yes, let me come back to you, Usra. Your final question. Yeah, so we want to also know, in terms of your experience, how you think Earth observation or Earth intelligence, as we've been talking about, can be integrated into what you do, and how you believe the work program initiatives can support. So for instance, if there is any avenue that you want to reach out, or people want to reach out to you, how should they do it as a country?
Yes, I think most of our work is related to Earth observation, whether it's biodiversity conservation or the works that we do in the early warning area. It's all related to Earth observations. So with the MOU that we signed with the GEO, we are to do a comprehensive ecosystem map of the Maldives. This will really complement to the work that we are doing with to implement our national targets that we are setting after the KMGVF. And this will really be one thing that will complement with the target one, which is also about plans on biodiversity, even the restoration target, 30 by 30 target, and even the minimizing climate impacts on biodiversity. So what we are doing with the ecosystem map will be what will really, the ecosystem map would be
A
benchmark for what we want to do, and actually the beginning of our work to implement these targets.
Yeah.
And also, GEO is helping us with the early warning for all program, and they do help us with the data and so finding solution and improve what we have and with this program. So for us to move forward, whether it's in the area of adaptation or even biodiversity conservation, Earth observation is a necessity. And I'm so glad to have the GEO team working with us to achieve the targets that we are setting. And for the member states and the other countries that would want to reach out to GEO, I think they should really go to the pavilions that you're setting up in the COPs and learn more and see how are the ways to join your team to work together on Earth observation, because you are having that hashtag which says Earth Intelligence for All. So it's not only us who should be there, it should be all of us, whether it's member states, other NGOs, developed states, and all. So I think during the COPs, I'm hoping all member states take the opportunity to connect with the GEO team and move forward and learn about Earth observation and the Earth intelligence that you're talking about. We all are talking about.
Very good. Thank you very much. I think we've heard from our panelists. This is quite insightful and very an eye-opening for me as a moderator. I believe it is so for you. There are a lot of things you've heard this afternoon regarding the engagement, the opportunities that exist, the entry points that are there for us to take leverage on. We also heard from Maldives about what they are doing. It's a small country, but it's very vibrant and active within the space of climate change, biodiversity, because there's a lot of things at stake. We may think the islands are the ones that are challenged, but climate change affects us all, and biodiversity affects us all. Land degradation is affecting all of us. All these challenges are affecting us, and so we need to step up. We need to activate that power in us as far as these opportunities are concerned, to contribute and to make our voices heard at the COP. On that note, I would want to thank all of you, Sarah, Motsomi, and Usra, for this lively time chatting with you. We have the video. I believe we will have the opportunity to go back and learn and package it very well for those of us who are not able to make it this afternoon to join us. I would want to once again thank our organizers. I would want to thank Tushara for putting this together. And I would also want to acknowledge Rui Kutani, who has been working actively with the UNFCCC on the tech knowledge product, as well as the early warning systems that Usra talked about. We are all available for a chat after we close this session. Once again, thank you very much.